The message lands between emails and a refill of burnt office coffee. 8:07. A clean blue bubble that doesn't apologize or explain. I'm done. I've moved the money. I stare at it long enough for the screen to dim and show me my reflection. Tired eyes. Shirt I promised I'd iron. I tell myself it's a scare tactic. A jab meant to bruise, nothing more. I lock my phone and stroll to the cafe downstairs like I own my morning. Americano, croissant, same as always. The barista taps the total. I slide my card with a little flourish. Declined. The word is small, lowercase, almost polite. She tries again. Same small word. I laugh like it's a joke we're sharing, then dig for another card and feel the first technical tremor under my ribs. The second card takes a long, thoughtful pause before it, too, decides against me. I switch to cash with a shrug big enough to cover my embarrassment and carry the coffee back to my desk like it weighs more than it should. I read the text again. The font hasn't changed. Neither have the words. My thumbs hover over the keyboard while my brain races ahead, drafting all the lines I won't send. Very funny, come on, we can talk about this, what are you doing? I settle for a measured, can we discuss? The three dots don't appear. My inbox fills. A client wants numbers. My boss wants yesterday. My heart wants an explanation that isn't coming. I open the banking app. The wheel spins like it's trying to be dramatic. Then the balance hits. 0 next to our joint, smaller than I expected next to my personal, and a memory of a conversation I brushed off, her mentioning separate accounts, separate goals, separate safety nets. I'd kissed her forehead, said we were a team. Then I'd stayed late again. I tell myself she'll come home after work, and we'll hash it out like adults. I imagine her, jaw set, hair pulled back, that calm that used to bring me down from ledges and lately felt like I was the ledge. I think about the last time we talked about budgets, how I framed it as boring, how she asked about an online betting charge I called a glitch. I think about the way she watched me when I said it. By 10, my hands have stopped pretending they're steady. I scroll through months of statements, playing archaeologist in ruins I helped build. Small withdrawals at odd hours. Transfers I waved away. A pattern that looks, suddenly, like foresight. She wasn't bluffing. She was building a life raft while I drilled holes in the deck and called it stress relief. I text again. Let's not do this over the phone. Nothing. At lunch, I swipe a card for a client tab. Declined, now uppercase in my head. I tell the waiter we'll split it differently. I pull bills from my wallet like a magician who's run out of tricks. At 2:13, I finally call her. Voicemail. Her voice is warm and distant, a recording of something I used to have. I hang up before the beep. My mouth tastes like metal. The coffee sits cold. The bubble stays blue. And for the first time since 8:07, I admit the obvious. The morning didn't implode. I did. The branch smells like toner and old carpet. I cut the line because I'm already apologizing with my face, palms up, sweat darkening the collar of a shirt that didn't deserve this kind of workout. The teller gives me the patient smile they teach in training. I shove my card across the counter like a confession and ask for a balance check on the joint, voice pitched to sound casual, and not like it's the only thing holding me together. She types. The monitor reflects green numbers in her glasses. Then her mouth does a tiny sympathetic downturn, the kind people use for funerals and fender benders. It's at 0, she says. She turns the screen slightly so I can see the proof, as if I'd accuse her of theater otherwise. €0. It looks like a joke, a face with its mouth closed. Something inside me slides off its hooks. My hands go light. The floor tilts. It's not the money I want to say. It's the statement. The move. The audacity. I hear myself ask about pending deposits, errors, glitches, anything with friction I can push against. She shakes her head gently, apologetic for the rules she didn't write. I ask to speak to a manager because that's what you do when you're a man who believes problems can be escalated into solutions. In the small glass office I explain, then defend, then accuse. I say the words marital, unauthorized, malicious. I try on legal terms I've only ever heard in shows, as if vocabulary could build me a ladder out of this hole. The manager listens the way doctors do when you've already Googled yourself into a diagnosis. He prints a ledger with neat rows that say exactly what I don't want to hear. Authorized transfers over the last months, methodical, capped at daily limits, not a smash and grab but a siphon. I sign for a copy with a pen that scratches like a lie detector. Spite, I decide. It has to be. A message sent in numbers because words weren't enough. I can work with spite. Spite is fuel. On the steps outside, wind knifing through my shirt, I make a vow that sounds like a promise and a threat tangled together. I'm going to get everything back. Every cent, every stitch of dignity. I call a lawyer whose name I pulled from a top 10 list and leave a voicemail that starts calm and ends with my throat tight. I text Lena something sharp enough to draw blood. This is theft. We're not done. Traffic surges and breaks around me, the city indifferent as a metronome. I clutch the printed ledger like a map out of a fire, tell myself this is a temporary humiliation, a plot point that will bend toward my win. I picture courtrooms, judges nodding along, me walking out with a check and the clean satisfaction of being right. Behind that fantasy, quieter but persistent, is the image of her at our kitchen table months ago, spreadsheet open, asking me where a charge came from and me shrugging, smiling, turning charm into a bandage. 0 isn't just a number. It's what you get when you subtract truth enough times. I fold the paper, jam it into my pocket like conviction, and march toward the next fight. I start with my brother because he's the one who knows how to dial me down. He answers on the second ring, cheerful, loud, a baby squealing somewhere in the background. I give him the headline like a breaking news alert. Lena cleaned out the joint account, texted me she's done. I wait for outrage to echo mine. Instead, he goes quiet in that heavy way that means he's thinking instead of reacting. All right, he says slowly. What happened before that? I tell him what happened is theft. He tries again. No, I mean before. I hang up feeling accused by a question. My mother picks up on the first ring, like she's been waiting for a chance to be useful. She gasps in all the right places. She tells me to come for dinner, that she'll make the stew I like, that I'll get through this. Then she asks if Lena said why. I say she didn't need a reason, she needed an audience. Sweetheart, my mother says, gentle as lint, there's always a reason. I bristle. Reasons feel like excuses people give each other when they're too tired to be honest. I call a friend from uni, who used to be my co-conspirator in all-nighters and cheap beer. He whistles when I tell him the number, 0, and then asks, disbelieving but not unkind. You sure you weren't pushing her away? The verb is so soft I could choke on it. I push back with decibels. I talk about betrayal like it's a sport I've trained for. He clears his throat and says he's got a meeting, tells me to keep him posted, says it the way people do when what they mean is, I don't want to be part of the blast radius. By the time I reach my father, I'm hoarse. He listens in those gravelly grunts he calls wisdom. You're angry, he observes, as if diagnosing a weather pattern. What do you want me to say? I snap. Say she's wrong. He sighs. She might be wrong, and you might still need to look at yourself. I close my eyes and picture him in his chair, the TV on mute, the old country stoicism he wears like a coat. The call ends with me feeling like I've tried to cash a check no one wants to sign. At work, I decide productivity will save me. I open spreadsheets and documents and emails until my desktop looks like a hoarder's garage. My focus is a strobe light, on, off, on, off. I answer a client with half a sentence, and a typo so violent it turns meaning inside out. My boss appears at my desk with that managerial smile that pretends not to notice the mess. He asks if I have a minute, then shepherds me into a glass cube where privacy goes to die. You're off your game, he says. Is something going on? The question is a door I could walk through, tell the truth, ask for room to breathe. Instead, I prop it shut with bravado. I'm fine. Just slammed. He nods slowly, as if I've chosen the wrong lane, but he can't force a merge. Take the afternoon if you need it. He offers, tone careful, eyes scanning my tells, the jittery knee, the frantic throat clearing, the way I'm gripping a pen like it insulted my family. Back at my desk, the emails keep multiplying, hydra-headed and hungry. I call one more friend, then another, chasing a script where someone says exactly what I want to hear. No one does. They ask for context, and I give the noise. The office hums with fluorescent indifference. I stare at my reflection in the dark patch of my monitor and see a man broadcasting fury because anger is easier to hold than shame. Somewhere, a notification dings. I ignore it and pretend the sound isn't the shape of my life, asking for an answer I don't have. I spread the statements across the kitchen table like a crime scene, dates and decimals under the overhead light that makes everything look a little more guilty. Bank logos, crisp fonts, the calm tone of institutions that never panic. I tell myself I'm hunting for her mistake, the slip that proves this is a tantrum in numbers. What I find are small exits, neat as stitches. There it is, a €200 transfer at 6:41 on a Tuesday. Description: SEPA, household reserve. Another, same time the next week, slightly different label. Safety. A month later the amounts step up. Euro 300, then €350. Always before dawn, always before I'm awake enough to ask questions. I remember that period as busy season, where I came home late and called it sacrifice. She must have set an alarm, padded to the table I'm sitting at now, and moved money with the same quiet focus she uses to fold laundry. Cash withdrawals at odd hours pop up like breadcrumbs. €60 from the ATM near her office on a wet Thursday. €40 from the machine at the supermarket we never shop at. Not big enough to trigger a fraud alert, not small enough to be pocket change. My phone buzzes with some unrelated notification, and the sound makes me flinch like I'm the one caught. I dig deeper. Her salary, once routed cleanly into the joint, starts arriving in 2 parts 3 months ago. I'd missed it in the blur of direct deposits and my own habit of not looking too closely. The joint gets the predictable slice, tidy, visible. The rest goes to an IBAN I don't recognize, the kind of number that looks like a serial code for a door I no longer have a key to. A standing order appears the following month. Utilities new, paying a provider we don't use. Insurance premiums to a company I've never heard of. The future, apparently, requires its own vendors. Receipts tucked in a folder beside the toaster make more sense now. I used to tease her about keeping paper in a digital age. She said paper doesn't log you out. There's a contract for a small storage unit, paid in cash. A note in her neat handwriting. Inventory backups. I want to call it paranoia. It reads like preparation. On my own side of the ledger, there's noise. Betting site charges I labeled as glitches, late-night takeaways, a ride share at 2:12 a.m. from a part of town I have no reason to be in. I try not to picture the look she must have had when she saw that one, the quiet math she did while I spun stories, and grin like charm could balance anything. The pattern sharpens the longer I stare. She didn't grab and run. She siphoned, measured, built a scaffold in the dark while I worked on appearances. The transfers max out just under daily limits. Nothing dramatic, nothing messy. Not a single overdraft fee. It's almost elegant. I sit back, and the chair complains. The house is painfully intact. The humming fridge, the plant she kept alive despite me forgetting to water it. I want to be furious at the competence of it all. Fury would be simpler than this thawing dread. She'd been separating our finances, while I was separating myself from consequence, one shrug at a time. The statements stop being numbers, and turn into a story I don't like being a character in. I pick up a highlighter and start tracing her exits, a bright line through months I thought were fine. His office is the color of invoices, gray with a hint of threat. He shakes my hand like it's a formality and gestures to a chair that has seen men try to charm their way out of meth. I give him the condensed version with all the heat turned up. Text at 8:07, empty account, betrayal, because I think if I sell the drama, he'll sell me justice. He listens with the stillness of a man who bills by the minute and doesn't waste any. Okay, he says, flipping open a legal pad. Here's what matters. Marital property is a category, not a feeling. Paper beats feeling. Timelines beat stories. He lists things in groups of 3 like a metronome. Income during the marriage, assets acquired during the marriage, debts accrued during the marriage. Exceptions exist: gifts, inheritances, premarital assets kept separate and actually treated as separate. Key phrase, actually treated. I tell him she stole from me. He lifts an eyebrow that has cross-examined better liars. If she documented transfers to a separate account and can show why, concerns about your spending, for instance, it's not as simple as theft. Judges like prudence. They hate tantrums disguised as pleadings. The word tantrum lands where it's supposed to. I sit back and try for reason. He asks for statements. I hand over the stack I've been studying, and he leaves through with a soft rustle that sounds like a countdown. He marks the early morning transfers with a neat check, notes the standing orders, circles my midnight rides, and gambling charges without comment. The silence does more than words. Here's what we're going to do, he says. We'll freeze what can be frozen, request disclosures, build a paper trail. Not texts from your mates. Not speeches about betrayal. Paper. You'll stop texting her threats or accusations. Everything you send is discoverable. Everything you send will be read by a stranger in a robe who doesn't find your outrage persuasive. I tell him I'm not threatening, I'm asserting. He gives me the look people reserve for men who split hairs to avoid haircuts. Rage is not a strategy, he says, almost kindly. It feels like motion, but it's heat without light. Judges squint and only see smoke. He asks about assets I've forgotten I mentioned, stocks I once bragged about, a motorcycle I never bought but researched like it was a religion. He wants timelines. When did the transfer start? When did the fights change shape? When did I first notice the balance shifting from hours to hours? But I answer in shrugs dressed as sentences. Then he pencils a line on the pad and looks up. Anything you're not telling me? The question is calm, surgical. It finds the soft tissue without prodding. I feel the room narrow. I think of the late-night bets I labeled glitches, the VPN login at a client's office I shouldn't have used, the message from a contractor who liked to skirt policies, my silence when Lena held up a printout and waited for a different man to answer. No, I say, too quickly, then tack on. Nothing that matters. He doesn't sigh. He just notes something inscrutable and moves on, which is worse. Fine. Then we proceed with what we have. But hear me, if there's a shoe to drop, I want your shoe. Not hers. Not opposing counsel's. Yours. Surprises are expensive. On the way out, he hands me a checklist that reads like contrition in bullet points. Gather this, stop that, log everything. The corridor smells like copier, toner, and consequence. I tuck the checklist into my jacket like proof of action, like I can staple my life into compliance. His question rides the elevator down with me, patient as gravity. Anything you're not telling me. I watch the floors tick by and pretend I'm the kind of man who doesn't owe anyone a better answer. The lock blinks red like an eye that's done with me. I try the code twice, then a third time because failure feels less final in threes. The spare key we kept under the pot isn't there. The pot isn't there. The mat is new. I stand on a stranger's welcome and realize it isn't mine. My bag is light. 2 shirts, a laptop, a toothbrush, and a zip bag I took from the office kitchen like I was stealing back some dignity. The neighbor's dog barks at me, and I bark back in a language called exhaustion. Jasper answers on the second ring, that familiar mix of amusement and concern in his hello. He doesn't ask for details on the curb. He just says come over and buzzes me in. His flat smells like clean laundry and last night's curry. The sofa is wide enough to pretend it's a choice. He tosses me a spare blanket with a football team I never cared for and points to the bathroom, like we're roommates for a week in a life where that would have been fun. I don't sleep, so much as blink between commercials of my own bad decisions. The coil in the couch digs into my shoulder, as if to underline. Pride chips away in quiet flakes. I hear Jasper brush his teeth, set 2 glasses of water on the counter, move through his tidy systems. He has house rules, shoes off, coasters, no phone calls after 11, that feel like civilization. I'm 30-something and need a friend to parent me into basic functionality. My wallet holds €47 and a membership card to a gym I haven't visited except to shower when fights at home turn the air thin. I scroll through statements again, but tonight I'm not hunting her pattern. I'm staring at mine. The late nights branded. Hustle. The half-truths I tossed like confetti. Harmless, I told myself, celebratory, part of the grind. And the gambling, which I labeled a phase the way people call winter. Crisp. Free bets, boosts, odds that looked like math pretending to be fate. A neat little rectangle glowing at 1 a.m., promising that if I just stayed in the game a bit longer, I could turn a bad day into a good story. I called it entertainment. The app called it a deposit. I open it now out of habit, and the login screen greets me like an old friend who always remembers my birthday. I stare long enough to feel the itch start up behind my ribs, then close it and lay the phone face down. The urge fades in increments, like a song moving to another room. In the morning, Jasper hands me coffee and an unasked-for plan. We'll hit the bank, we'll make a list, we'll keep receipts. He doesn't say fix your life. He says today first, then tomorrow. He goes to work. I stay and send emails to HR and the lawyer, hollowed-out sentences that sound professional if you don't read the punctuation. Lena's silence is louder on a couch than in a bed. Beds remember you. Sofas let you know you're passing through. I make the blanket tight around my shoulders, a grown man burritoed in a team he never supported, and finally say it to no one in particular. This isn't a setback. It's a consequence. And I'm lying on it. It's the small brass key that catches on my jeans when I'm fishing for coins. Dull, nicked, stamped with a number that means nothing. I roll it between my fingers, trying to place the echo of it. Not the flat, not the office, not the bike I sold to fund a smart move that never paid off. I turn it in the light, and memory arrives with the patience of an accountant. A Saturday months ago, Lena handing me a key ring she'd thinned out. Keep the spares, she'd said. I'd pocketed them the way I'd pocketed most things, without looking. The storage facility squats behind a garden center and a failing gym, rows of metal mouths with orange teeth. The receptionist doesn't lift her eyes from a tablet when I mention the unit number. She slides a clipboard toward me like a test I've already failed. The corridor is cool and humming. My footsteps sound like I'm walking inside a drum. The lock is stubborn, as if it remembers me as an afterthought. When it gives, the metal door rolls up with a rattle that feels louder than it should. Inside, boxes stacked with the kind of order you learn from years of moving house without moving ground. Labels in Lena's neat, decisive hand. Taxes 2018 to 2023. Insurance, home health business. Warranties, contracts, originals. A plastic drawer unit with a label maker's arrogance. Copies. No furniture, no secret life, no surprise motorcycle. Just paper. The kind that anchors and indicts. I cut the first box open with my thumbnail, and the smell of dry ink and cardboard breathes out at me. Each folder is dated, clipped, sometimes cross-referenced with a post-it that reads like kindness masquerading as control. I flip through tax returns and find my name in the tidy machinery of our life. Income, deductions, signatures. The numbers sit there, impartial as stars. In a blue folder, thinner than the rest, I find an envelope. Cream paper, my name written like she says it when she's tired but careful. Across the flap, if things go bad. Not if you go bad. If things do. I sit on the metal lip of the unit and hold the envelope in my lap for a breath, feeling the stupid ceremony of it. Then I open it. Her letter is short. Lena's always had that gift, using the exact amount of words required to hold the truth. She writes that the storage unit contains originals she moved out of the flat because I'd started losing envelopes and telling her the desk ate them. She writes that she opened a separate account after the second time she found me standing in the kitchen at 2 a.m., lit by the fridge, rehearsing a lie we both knew by beat. She writes that if I'm reading this, we're probably in the part of the story where we stop pretending preparation is paranoia. There are instructions, a list of policies, claim numbers, who to call if the worst thing is not my pride but something with sirens. She hopes I never need them. She hopes I'll get help. Not for me, she writes. For you. The unit hums. Somewhere, someone is closing a door with more force than necessary. I read the letter again, slower, and feel the shape of every time she tried to hand me a map while I insisted I wasn't lost. I fold it back along the crease she made months ago, slide it into the envelope, and put it in my jacket like a hot coal I intend to keep. The boxes don't accuse. They simply exist. Evidence of a woman who refused to let chaos be our cosigner. I lock the unit behind me, and the key feels heavier on my ring, like it's learned my name. Her handwriting has always been its own voice, upright, steady, no loops she didn't mean. The paper is thick like it expects to be kept. I smooth it on my knee and read myself as she saw me, not as I introduced myself to mirrors. She starts with the kindest version of the truth. I love you. On its own line, A sentence that doesn't excuse anything that follows. Then comes the ledger I pretended didn't exist. She lists the cards I swore were temporary, the balance transfers I called strategic, the payday I advanced 3 times in a spring that had too many weekends. I know you think in streaks, she writes. You believe in the win that fixes the losses. But debt isn't a story arc. It's gravity. She names amounts, dates, not to punish but to place pins on a map. January, the first glitch, that wasn't. March, the night she sat on the kitchen floor while I paced and promised. May, the birthday dinner I insisted on paying for with money that didn't belong to me. I started separating what I could, she writes, not to hurt you, but to stop the house from drowning with you. I'm not your warden. I am not your insurer. There is a paragraph about counseling that reads like a hand extended across a table I flipped over. She found a therapist with evening hours. She emailed me the link and put 2 slots on the calendar marked us. I moved one for a meeting and left the other to die on a Saturday. You told me we don't need a stranger to translate us, she writes. I think we do. We speak different languages when we're scared. Then the part that drops my stomach clean through the metal chair, work. She doesn't pretend to know the jargon. She writes around the edges of it with frightening accuracy. Something at your company isn't right, she says. She noticed the stories that didn't match, my late nights that didn't have deliverables attached, the way I flinched when she asked specifics, the client name I refused to say. She mentions an email she saw once on my lock screen. Compliance, urgent, flagged, as I shrugged and turned the phone face down. If there is a mess, I think it will land on your desk whether you made it or not, she writes. Please, tell someone before someone tells you. She ends the way she began, precise, without drama. She's moved documents to the storage unit. She's left me policy numbers, a contact at the bank who doesn't talk down. She will not argue by text. She will not rescue me from consequences I auditioned for. If you want help, ask a professional, is her last line before the closing. If you want me, be someone who asks before it's too late. I fold the paper once, twice, the crease finding itself like it remembers how to break. My debts blink awake in numbers instead of excuses. The counseling slots I decline feel like doors I walk past and now can't find in the hallway. And work turns cold in my mouth. I see the way my manager watched me yesterday, the way HR CC'd legal on an email about new protocols, the way the air in my office felt suddenly thinner. I slide the letter back into the envelope and sit there until my legs go numb, every sentence a mirror I can't fog with breath. She never raised her voice. She raised the ground. The email lands with the kind of subject line that empties lungs. Urgent, access anomaly, immediate action required. It's from compliance, with legal writing shotgun in the CC line, and my manager's name glowing like a warning flare. I click and read myself into a corner. Client funds are missing. Transfer requests originated under my credentials. Timestamps that match nights I told Lena I was wrapping up, and then sat in the dark pretending to be busy. There's a PDF of logs that looks like a cardiogram of a heart that isn't mine. My mouth dries to paper. I wait for the sentence that clears me, some clause that says, we know this can't be you. It never comes. Instead there's protocol, do not access systems, surrender devices to IT, expect contact from the authorities. Expect contact? The polite way to say, the police are coming. My phone rings from a number that tries to look friendly by not being blocked. A detective with a conversational voice asks if I can pop by for a chat. He calls it routine, the way dentists call drills pressure. I agree because refusing feels like guilt in italics. When I hang up, the room tilts like a ship taking on water, and all I can think is how Lena wrote that line about messes landing on my desk whether I made them or not. I replay the last few months with the clarity of hindsight and the loyalty of a traitor. The contractor who loved shortcuts. The VPN token that went missing and reappeared in my drawer with an apology I accepted because it saved me an email chain. The night my laptop woke itself at 3:17, fan whirring, and I smacked the lid shut like a parent putting a child to bed mid-scream. I see my own sloppiness dressed up as trust. I see opportunity wearing my badge. The banking app is still open on my phone from earlier, the zero like a pupil watching me. For the first time, Lena's transfer stop reading as a slap and start reading as strategy. Ring fencing. Fire break. She saw something coming at a speed I pretended wasn't possible. I thought she was punishing me. Maybe she was insulating herself from me and something stalking me in the systems I half understood. HR wants my laptop in a box and my keycard on the desk by noon. I walk through the open plan like a ghost they can see. People lower their eyes. My boss uses the slow voice. We'll sort it. He lies, because hope is cheaper than lawyers. IT seals my machine with a sticker that looks like a scar. Outside, the air smells like rain that might not arrive. I sit on a bench and stare at my hands like they're evidence. I try on indignation and find it doesn't fit. Not today. Today, I have the wrong kind of timeline and the right kind of dread. The detective texts an address and a smiley that feels unhinged. I think of Lena at the table before dawn, moving money as if carrying a candle through a dark house. Not spite. Not a stunt. A firewall. I was busy calling it betrayal while she was labeling boxes, taxes, insurance, originals. The city moves around me, indifferent. I breathe, shallow and loud, and realize the worst part isn't that they think I did it. It's how close my laziness came to making them right. The room is colder than it needs to be, a square painted in a color you'd only choose if you wanted the truth to shiver out of people. The lights hum like insects. A camera, the size of an apology, blinks red in the corner. The detective from the phone has a partner now, both of them with the steady patience of men who've heard every version of innocence before lunch. They start with the script. Do I understand I'm not under arrest? Do I want water? Do I mind if they record? I say yes, no, no, and it sounds like I'm practicing for a different life. Then the laptop appears, bagged and tagged, and a stack of paper logs that look like a heartbeat with arrhythmia. Phantom logins, the detective says, as if naming them tames them. My credentials hitting the server at hours even I don't like myself. IP traces that bounce through places on a map we only visit in films. A co-working space in Tallinn, a proxy in Lagos, a data center in Frankfurt that's too clean to be innocent. Offshore attempts, one of them says, careful not to call them successes where the recording can hear. I keep my hands flat on the table to stop the fidget my body wants. I tell them I didn't move any money, that I've never authorized anything outside procedure, that my access token went missing for a day and reappeared with an apology. They ask for the apology. I say it was verbal. They look at each other the way therapists do when your childhood shows up to your appointment. We walk through password hygiene like a hygiene check I'm failing. Did I reuse variants? Yes. Did I store a hint in a notes app? Maybe. Did I email myself a CSE once? Just to be safe. I close my eyes. The detective's pen stops moving, which feels worse than when it was moving. They slide across printouts of my bank statements, like a magician doing a reveal. The late-night bets sit there in neat lines, the cash transfers that fill the holes. Stress relief, I hear myself say, and even my own ears don't buy it. One of them asks if I was in trouble, if a loss led me to borrow, from client funds to even a score. I laugh because I'm either brave or stupid, and it comes out like I'm the second thing. I swear, with all the ragged sincerity I have left, that I didn't steal a cent. They don't roll their eyes. They just return to the logs. There's the night my laptop woke itself at 3:17. There's the VPN token authenticating from a place my phone's location services disagree with. There's a session that began 1 minute after I texted Lena I was home soon, and ended 2 minutes before I sent a celebratory GIF to a group chat I barely like. Help us understand, the partner says, gentle as a saw. If it wasn't you, why does it look so much like you? Because I made it easy, is the line I don't say. Because I treated security like a colleague who could carry my share. Because I confused access with competence and convenience with trust. I don't know, I say instead. But I can help find who did. They nod like they've heard that too. The light hums louder. The camera blinks. Somewhere above us, an air vent sends down a thin stream of refrigerated doubt. I keep my hands flat and try to look like a man who deserves the truth to land on his side. My lawyer calls me into the same gray office, and this time he has a folder he treats like it contains the weather. He doesn't ask how I'm sleeping. He opens to a page and taps with his pen. Your wife didn't empty the account to punish you, he says. She moved funds into a trust. Auditable, transparent, separated from your liabilities by design. The word trust lands with a sting I deserve. He sketches the structure in plain language, as if explaining electricity to a man who keeps wet hands near sockets. Revocable for her, irrevocable to your creditors. Trustee independent. Bank statements clean enough to eat off. Every transfer labeled, timed, documented with the kind of care that makes judges relax their shoulders. She ring-fenced, he says, and the metaphor is so exact I picture her at dawn building a fence post by post while I slept with my shoes still on. I thought she... I stop before the word rob embarrasses me further. He nods like he's heard 100 versions of the story where rage wears the hero's cape. No. She preserved what was arguably marital, arguably hers, and definitely not yours to risk. If investigators come knocking, and they are knocking, the last thing you needed was commingled funds and a foggy trail. He slides over approvals, consents, trustee names. The signatories are there in black ink, mine absent and irrelevant. He points at an audit clause that reads like an invitation. Come look. If you'd moved money after the compliance email, we'd be negotiating with handcuffs in the background. Instead, she built a glass box around the clean parts. I hate that relief arrives before gratitude. It sits heavy in my stomach, an admission I do not say out loud. He watches me work through it. You're angry because she acted without you, he says. But understand this, you were a risk factor. She removed you from the blast radius. I think of the zero on my app, the ledger I waved in the bank manager's face, the way I titled it theft to avoid the other word, safeguard. I think of her letter, the polite warning about messes landing on my desk. I see the trust like a lifeboat I mocked while the ship took on water. What now? I ask, and the question sounds smaller than I want. He lays out homework like a teacher who's tired of seeing me cram. Provide timelines. Surrender devices without attitude. Debt counseling, not as optics but as oxygen. And if there's anything else, he adds, the same line as before. I need it today, not when the police bring it. On the tram back to Jasper's, the city runs its errands without me. I picture the trust documents stacked in some banker's folder with tabs. Income, transfers, purpose. There's nothing romantic about it. It's a spreadsheet with a spine. I press my forehead to the window and let the glass cool the heat behind my eyes. She wasn't robbing me. She was moving the china before I knocked over the table. The fence is up. I'm outside it, finally seeing what it keeps safe. The mirror above Jasper's sink is too honest for a borrowed bathroom. Harsh light, no mercy, my face doing that thing where it's both familiar and a stranger I owe money to. I lean in until the glass fogs and, for a second, I can't see myself. It's a relief I don't deserve. Flashbacks arrive, like receipts I never meant to keep. The calendar invite Lena sent, therapy, 1900 hours, 2 slots framed in hopeful blue. I moved the first for a client call that could have been an email. I left the second to wither on a Saturday, telling her we didn't need a referee. I remember the way she closed her laptop, careful, like setting down something that might break even if you do it right. Promises, God, the inventory of them. I'll quit after this quarter. I'll pay that card off next month. I'll be home for dinner at 6, at 7, and not at all. Each a chip slid across a table I kept calling life. I said sorry in different fonts. I said it so often it became background noise, a fan humming in summer you don't notice until it stops. And the wagers? Always won last. The rush wasn't the win. It was the narrowing of everything to numbers and chance, the quiet between placing the bet and watching the wheel decide. It felt like meditation if meditation ended with your stomach falling through your shoes. I called it stress relief because gambling addiction sounded like someone else's headline, a story reserved for men who lose houses in years. I hadn't, not yet. I was functional, which is what you call drowning when you can still wave. I see myself at 1:47 a.m., blue glow on my face, swiping to deposit a little more because the odds were value, and I had a red. I see Lena watching from the doorway, her silhouette asking the kind of question words complicate. I promised then, too. I meant it for the length of a day. The mirror keeps handing me scraps. The morning I buried a bank letter under a stack of menus because shame made me tidy. The night I told a joke at a dinner we couldn't afford, then tipped too much to buy the illusion I was generous. The group chat where I sent a winning slip as proof I was up overall, as if one lucky sunrise erases a month of storms. I rinse my face like water can baptize this into something better. The man in the glass blinks and waits. The sentence forms in my mouth and resists, heavy as a coin I don't want to spend. I say it anyway, quiet enough to make it real without making it tragic. I have an addiction. The air doesn't change. The light still hums. But the sentence stops slipping off the walls. It sticks. It explains things without excusing them. It makes sense of Lena's trust, of her letter, of the way my lawyer looked at me, as if there was a leak I hadn't named. I dry my face on a towel that isn't mine. I sit on Jasper's sofa and type, gambling help, into a search bar like a man who's finally reading the instruction manual he threw away. I don't hit send for a minute. Then I do. Not for her. Not for judges or detectives. For the man in the mirror who keeps showing up, even when I don't. Compliance books a conference room with a view I'm not allowed to enjoy. Glass walls, a jug of water that looks like it belongs in a wellness ad, two people in lanyards who speak in clauses. They're not here to comfort me. They're here to make a ledger out of a mess. We can treat you as a witness or a subject, the woman says, clean as a scalpel. Which one depends on how useful you are. The man slides a paper across the table. Cooperation terms. Preserve and produce. Non-prosecution considered if good faith and material assistance lead to recovery. It's not a hug. It's a contract with hope in the margins. I signed because pride was expensive and I'm out of credit. They want everything, devices, tokens, notes, the shape of my days. We go through my access history like it's a travel diary from a trip I barely remember. They point to an authentication at 2:06. I tell them I was asleep on the sofa, show them a ride receipt timestamped hours earlier, show them Jasper's building key fob log he forwards without commentary. They nod but don't absolve. Each data point is a bead. They want a rosary. We pull up my email. The glitch. I called a year ago when a password reset link arrived without me asking. The weird login notification that I swiped away because I was in a meeting trying to sound indispensable. Each ignored ping becomes a timestamp. Each timestamp becomes a narrow path I didn't take. Then my lawyer appears with a precision I didn't earn and places a neat folder on the table. Lena's records. Transfers labeled with purpose, signed, countersigned. The trust formation documents. The audit trail's beauty is brutal. Life ring-fence days before the first phantom login. The first major move out of the joint lands on a date that now lives in the breach report. She didn't know the breach, I say, and it feels important to defend her from a cynicism they haven't voiced. She knew me. The woman flips to the timestamps and, for the first time, leans back. We see that, she says. They overlay my access sessions with the trust's timeline, my rides, my betting slips I've coughed up like contraband. The ugly truth makes a better alibi than my outrage ever could. I wasn't at a terminal when several of the big transfers queued. I wasn't even on the network when a job ran my credentials like a puppet. I was, embarrassingly, in a bar arguing about a football match I hadn't watched. The logs agree with my humiliation. It isn't a clean absolution. The man in the lanyard circles a cluster of authentications that look too much like me to dismiss. Careless is adjacent to complicit, he says, not unkindly. We'll need more. So I give more. The contractor's name with the shortcuts. The day my token went missing. The apology I never wrote down. The email from IT with an attachment I opened because it wore the right logo. I watch their pens move and feel the strange relief of finally putting the rot on paper. By late afternoon, they have a tentative shape. Frankfurt Data Center, scripts scheduled at night, credentials harvested and replayed. Tallinn and Lagos are exits, not homes. My cooperation becomes a note at the bottom of a slide. Subject providing context, credible. Walking out, I don't feel vindicated. I feel permitted to breathe on the shallow setting. My phone buzzes with a message from the recovery group I finally texted, meeting times, an address in a church basement. I add it to my calendar without moving it. The trust sits in my mind like a lighthouse. The fence still holds. I'm still outside it, but at least I'm not lost in the dark pretending I chose the night. The conference room smells like paper and lemon cleaner, the kind of neutral that pretends no one bleeds here. I sit on one side with my lawyer's neat stack of documents arranged like a fence. The door clicks and Lena walks in with hers. She looks like herself, which is somehow worse than if she'd arrived in armor, hair up, simple blouse, no theatrics. She nods at me and then at the lawyers, and the air settles into an adult temperature. We start with logistics because logistics don't cry. Dates, disclosures, who's filing what and when. My lawyer talks in clauses. Hers talks in outcomes. I had almost nothing until the quiet lands in the middle of the table and turns into a question I can't dodge. The text, I say, because I want to hate it less. Why like that? She folds her hands, the same way she used to when she was deciding if a plant was worth repotting. Speed, she says. Sever quickly. No ambiguity for you to argue me out of. No window for you to move money after compliance not. The trust had to stay clean, auditable, separate, uncontaminated by your risks. I didn't want to watch you flail and drag me under out of habit. It's not cruel. It's precise. I glance at the wall clock as if time will volunteer to take the blame. You thought I'd, what? Run? I thought you'd delay, she says. Rage. Smooth talk. Make just enough mess that everything blurred together. You're very good at fog. She softens only in the eyes, just enough for history to flicker. I didn't want to be your alibi. Or your collateral. My lawyer clears his throat like we're drifting off agenda, but no one rescues me, and I find I don't want to be rescued. I'm getting help, I say, which feels like bringing a teaspoon to a house fire. There's a group. I'm glad, she says, and I believe her. That's for you. Keep it for you. We move through boundary lines, like surveying land after a flood. What's hers? What's mine? What belongs to the auditors? She produces copies of trust statements with tabs, signatures crisp, timestamps a quiet choir. We thought ahead. The dates run before the breach, before the interrogations, before my anger found the bank queue. Every sheet says the same thing without speaking. This wasn't punishment. This was triage. I didn't want to text you, she adds, as if offering a receipt. I wanted to talk. But you talk like a storm. I needed clean air. I'm sorry, I say, and it arrives without a speech to balance on. I don't ask for forgiveness. The room isn't built for that. We sign things that make the future official. Her lawyer slides a final page across to me. Notice to cease direct contact outside counsel. It's not a muzzle. It's a life jacket neither of us will try to cut off the other. We stand. There's a second where habit suggests a hug and sense says no. At the door, she stops. I hope you get well, she says. Not better. Well? I hope you build something that isn't a rescue. But it won't be with me. Outside, the corridor hums. I hold my copy of the documents like proof and penance. Sever quickly, she said. Keep the trust clean. Keep me from dragging her down. I thought the text was a knife. It was a tourniquet. The church basement smells like coffee and old wood. Metal chairs in a circle, a clock that moves louder than time. I sit where I can see the exit and try to look like a man attending a meeting, not auditioning for redemption. People introduce themselves without apology. When it's my turn, my name comes out smaller than I remember. I say the sentence that's been rattling around my mouth since the mirror. I have a gambling problem. No one claps. No one flinches. A woman with ink on her fingers nods, like I've set down a heavy box where it belongs. After, a guy named Theo offers me a list that looks like a grocery run for better habits. Meetings. Calls. Blocks for the apps that pretend to be games. No promises, he says, catching the shape forming on my lips. Promises are how we kept losing. I put the list in my pocket like a talisman and feel every step up the stairs as if gravity got past security. At home, Jasper's home, my current geography, I open the betting apps and press delete with fingers that shake. They don't go quietly. They offer boosts, bonuses. One last spin is a goodbye present. I take screenshots, send them to Theo like evidence, then click through the uninstall prompts until my screen looks cleaner than I am. I call the bank to cancel the card I used for deposits. The operator reads a script about responsible play, and I say, kindly as I can, that I'm retiring from the sport. The debt counselor's office is efficient without being cruel. A whiteboard with numbers, a plant still alive. I hand over statements and watch her stack them by category, not sin. She doesn't ask why I did it. She asks what I want to stop doing. I say I want to stop waking up already behind. She nods and draws a line down a page. On one side, income. On the other, reality. We build a budget that looks like a diet for a life that's been binging. The humiliating part isn't the math. It's handing over the steering wheel. I'll need you access to your accounts, she says. Alerts on transactions above 50. Automatic transfers on payday. You'll get an allowance for a while. Cash. The word allowance tastes like childhood and consequence. I signed anyway. Pride has been an expensive hobby. I can't afford it. Making amends starts with people, not bank apps. I call my brother and tell him the version without the polish. I tell my mother I won't be borrowing, not even for a week, especially not for a week. I send Lena a note through counsel that says only what's necessary. I'm in a program. Debts are mapped. No contact needed. Be well. It isn't a bid. It's a receipt. The days get boring in the way healing always is when it's real. I go to work and answer questions from compliance until my throat is dry. I go to meetings and say my name out loud until it fits again. I cook pasta in a saucepan with a dent, bring my own coffee to avoid the tyranny of impulse. When the itch hits at 1 a.m., I call Theo and let his voicemail be a wall between me and a relapse dressed as a good idea. I don't promise anyone I'll never fail again. I make smaller things. I make a Tuesday with no deposits. I make a Saturday where my phone stays in the kitchen. I make a month where the numbers don't lie. It turns out amends are quieter than promises. They don't sparkle. They add up. The update comes in a meeting room that used to be mine for weekly status checks. Now I'm a guest in it, sitting on the edge of a chair like it might refuse me. The forensics lead is young in that infuriating way where competence hasn't had time to wrinkle. He lays out a timeline with the calm of a surgeon. My VPN profile was cloned, my token replayed. Scripts ran at night from a clean machine sitting behind a rented rack in Frankfurt, hopping through shells in Tallinn and Lagos like stones across a river. They show me a screenshot of a login session wearing my name with posture I don't recognize. They have a suspect. A contractor I knew well enough to nod at, the shortcut evangelist with a fix for every security prompt that slowed him down. He'd borrowed my token once, and oops, that felt like an apology at the time, and now reads like prying loose a screw to see if the door rattles. When they tracked the uploads, they found his pattern, a time-stamped arrogance, the kind you get when you think scripts are smarter than people. He'd built a shadow schedule and let it run until greed overstayed its welcome. I give them everything. The messages, the half-remembered conversations, the afternoon I couldn't find my token and then did, warm from someone else's pocket. We sit with it, and I watch their pens move like they're fencing around a problem. Legal enters and says words like indemnify and recovery. The police call later with a tone that's a degree softer than the last time. They picked him up. He was sloppy in a way that felt like confidence. An offshore account is not as far offshore as men like to imagine. Part of the money is already on its way back, shoved through mechanisms designed for undoing. A clerk appears, efficient as gravity, gathers what we've reduced ourselves to, and disappears with our names tucked under her arm. We wait. The clock is loud enough to be rude. I think about rings, drawers cleared, a storage unit humming with order. I think about how we got here, late nights and last bets, a text at 8:07 that felt like a blade and turned out to be a tourniquet. When the clerk returns, she has a stamp that makes a sound I feel in my bones. Final. The word is small, but it opens a door and closes another. My lawyer says something about next steps in a tone that implies stairs. Hers thanks everyone like this was a meeting where we aligned on deliverables. We stand. There's that old choreography in my muscles. Reach for a hug, settle for a nod. She nods. I mirror it, slow, careful, the way you handle a glass you've already chipped. Take care, she says. It's not a curse. It's a boundary. You too, I answer, and we both know that's the end of a language we once spoke without translating. Outside, the corridor smells like printer drums and lemon. I walk past people who don't know I've just entered the country. The elevator mirrors throw me back at myself. A man with a blue smudge on his finger and an address that is currently a sofa. On the street, the city is busy proving it can go on without our plot line. It does. Later, I tuck my copy of the decree into a cheap folder and slide it onto a shelf where I keep things I'm learning to live with. No screaming, no scene, just signatures, and the ache you get when a lesson arrives after you've already paid for it twice. Love without trust isn't a tragedy. It's a timer. Hours hit 0 in blue ink. The new place has radiators that click when they're thinking and windows that stick unless you talk to them nicely. It's small enough that I can hear the kettle decide to boil from the bedroom. The first night, I lay on the floor with a pizza box and looked at the ceiling like it might answer for the past. It didn't. It just held. My life is measured now in envelopes and calendar blocks. Rent, utilities, groceries, transport, cash and labeled sleeves that make me feel 12 and honest. The debt counselor's spreadsheet lives on my desktop like a lighthouse. On payday, transfers leave automatically, little boats heading out in bad weather that still make it home. Nothing bounces. Numbers add instead of lie. I cook more pasta than a man should admit, and eat it at a table I assembled with an Allen key and a stubbornness that felt like faith. Work is quieter. I don't aim for heroics. I aim for done by 6 and an inbox that doesn't hum like a hive. Compliance still calls sometimes, but their tone has changed from interrogation to maintenance. I go to meetings in the church basement and learn the names of men who know what a 2 a.m. means. I make coffee, stack chairs, tell the truth when it's my turn. The urgency in my chest untangles into something slower that I don't recognize and decide to keep. I buy a second-hand bike and ride along the canal until my legs complain and my head stops negotiating with itself. Sundays I call my mother and talk about tomatoes. My brother sends videos of the baby doing ordinary miracles, and I watch them twice. Jasper comes by with a plant I will try not to kill. He looks around and says, "It suits you." I want to argue, but it does. One evening, with the radiator clicking in approval, I write a note to Lena. Not a letter to thaw anything, not bait. Through the lawyers, because boundaries are furniture now, and I've stopped rearranging without permission. I thank her for the trust and the timestamps, for moving the china before I knocked over the table. I tell her the group meets on Tuesdays, the apps are gone, the budget balances. I don't ask how she is. I assume she's well. I hope she's well. I keep it short enough to respect the distance I earned. I print it and sign in blue ink because originality matters, then put it in an envelope that will go where it should and no further. When it's done, I sit at my small table and listen to the kettle settle back into itself. The flat is quiet without being empty. I check the account out of habit and see a balance that isn't impressive and doesn't need to be. The line's not long, but it's honest. There's an emptiness I used to chase and call freedom, and there's the other kind, the space you make when you stop filling every silence with a bad idea. The account is empty of chaos. I'm not. I'm full of smaller things that hold. Tuesdays, pasta, a bike along the water, a note sent for the right reason at the right time. It turns out balance isn't a number. It's a room that fits.